enough. Other rappers is delirious. Yeah, it's really that serious. Better holler if you really feeling me. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna live in abundance. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna. I gotta keep it 100. We gotta stop all the stunting. You know we coming from nothing. Yo, you talking about money, you bluffing. We gotta do something different. We gotta change how we live in. We gotta do better for women. We gotta do better for children. We gotta listen to victims, whether Jewish or Muslim or Christian. It doesn't matter your religion. You gotta stand against the system, or else you just another villain. How you just sitting there chilling?
Good afternoon, everybody in the music airways and everybody out there listening to the podcast, wherever you at, on Podbean, wherever you at. You know, I'm everywhere now. So I just wanted to talk about something, not real quick. I want to take my time with this issue. I want to literally let people understand how I feel about this position and how important it is that we have such a anti-war rhetoric. And how important it is to be anti-war. I just want y'all to understand that we should not be supporting any wars, and that's on Democrat and Republican sides. There is no who's the better party when it comes to war, because what the Democrats and Republicans both understand that war is big business for this country. This country has only been around for almost 280 years, something like that. Don't quote me on that. And every year, the United States has been established off of colonialism, started with a war. So we only had about 20 years of peace with no wars. But every single generation after that, my generation, my father's generation, my grandfather's generation, my great-grandfather's generation, my great-great-grandfather's generation, we have always had war. And it has become to the point that it's normal. It's something that we should acknowledge and always accept. When we say serve this country, we mean let's send our kids out to go get murdered for corporate interests. Money in the 1% pockets. Money in Congress pockets. Money in Congress pockets. Both sides. That's why these congressmen and women literally join making what? They're supposed to make like $100,000 a year, but they come out as millionaires. Nancy Pelosi has fuck you money. Nancy Pelosi has fuck you money because Nancy Pelosi is just as corrupt as Chuck Schumer. As you want me to start naming all those Republicans? Because Biden, Democrat, who is sending, he's already sending. They're already there. He's sending more troops to the border of the Ukrainian and Russian border, really right next to each other. Ukraine is a government that is ran by neo-Nazi influence. Ukraine wasn't always like that. In 2014, our government in Israel supported a coup that ousted out a democratically elected president. And now we have this far right-wing neo-Nazi government chose to elect a new president who was a comedian. Interesting. That's how fucked up it gets, man. Like, look at here. It got bad here. Real bad. And we the working class just became so much more split down the middle, and Trump was elected because of what happened in the Obama era. And then when Trump left, now we have Biden. And a lot of people think that Biden is doing better when he's doing actually the same thing. Biden demands more money for NATO so he can dictate what they want, their interests, just like the Trump era wanted to dictate their interests and demand more money for NATO. There's no difference. If there's a difference, the only difference is he's not tweeting like Trump used to do. I have an article here that's from Liberation News. Shouts out to Liberation News always. I want to read this article here. It talks about the situation that is happening right now. The Biden administration, Pentagon, NATO, allies are conducting a dangerous and reckless campaign against Russia, one that has the potential to turn into a catastrophic for the people of the United States, Russia, Ukraine, and the world. The aim is to strengthen the U.S. position as a dominant world power, a thoughtfully bipartisan goal. Now, bipartisan goal. Remember, bipartisan. So both parties are pro-war in this. Both parties. Recent months, Russia has been the object of intense media demonization designed to win over the U.S. public to support this campaign. This is what they always have to do, by the way. Whenever you hear about them about to go to war, they have to give us propaganda that is mostly false so they can go to war. It's the same shit that they've been doing since the beginning. I mean, I think only World War II is when it was like, oh, they didn't give propaganda. Don't quote me on that. I wasn't alive around there. But when all I remember is the Korean War was bullshit. Vietnam was definitely bullshit. And fast forward to now, they said that small countries like Iraq, Afghanistan had weapons of mass destruction. And we needed to get rid of their leaders and control those countries and give them actual democracy while we get opium and all these other resources, get our kids strung out on opium and pills and stuff like that. Then they end up going to the heroin addict and then they end up overdosing off of fentanyl. There's a lot that war has given pain to this working class here in America. The Party for Social Liberation demands the anti-Russian campaign calls for an end to imperialist NATO alliance. While NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, has moved ever eastward over the past 3 decades to surround Russia, it is Russia that is relentlessly deceived as the aggressor by U.S. politicians and the mass media. Reality, NATO has always been an offensive, not defensive alliance. Created in 1941, it grouped together major imperialist powers in anticipation of a third world war against the Soviet Union and its allies. Since the end of the Cold War, NATO has been increasingly repurposed to contain the Russian Federation, now capitalist, but still independent of Western powers. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, NATO consisted of 16 member states. Since then, it has added 14 countries, mostly former republics of the Soviet Union or its allies in Eastern Europe. From the beginning, NATO has been dominated by the United States, despite the North Atlantic. Its name, the United States has drawn many NATO states into its wars and occupations in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, and elsewhere. And Gaddafi in Libya, he had nukes. Gaddafi wanted peace. Gaddafi gave away his nukes. Obama sent in NATO. NATO killed Gaddafi. NATO gave war crimes. NATO. But they're out here literally toppling governments. That should very, very, very make you concerned. The vast expansion of NATO has taken place despite the assurance that the U.S. officials in the George H.W. Bush administration made Gorbachev. If I say it wrong, I apologize. Leadership of the USSR that if the Soviet allowed German unification, NATO would not seek to move even 1 inch further to the east. And now, like I told you in 2014, the Obama administration openly supported a color revolution and deeply divided Ukraine using neo-Nazi military forces to violently overthrow the elected president, Viktor, and I'm not even going to try to massacre this man's name, who had attempted to maintain a centrist position between Russia and the European Union, disguising who the new president should be. Nuland is today the State Department official in charge of Ukraine's related affairs. Wow, it's crazy, man. She literally just got a a boost. U.S. leaders expect the overthrow would be followed by Ukraine joining the European Union and NATO, co- competing the inner circle of Western Russia and its largest population in economic centers. Such a development would have meant that the strategic home base in Russia, Black Sea fleet, would have passed into NATO's hands, something no Russian government could accept. Crimea was part of Russia from 1783 until 1954, when it was transferred to Ukraine Soviet Socialist Republic at the time when Russia and Ukraine were both part of the same state. The Soviet Union Socialist Republic, Russian forces occupied Crimea following the 2014 coup, and a 95% of the following ethnic Russian population voted in favor of rejoining the Russian Federation. The NATO leaders were stunned by the setback, but the alliance eastward march did not end, nor did U.S. military aid. Since 2014, the United States has provided more than 9% of Ukraine's foreign military aid, now totaling nearly damn, $3 billion, as well as trainers and special operation forces, has been increasing that aid in recent years. Eastern Ukraine, an armed revolt against the U.S. backed and fascist led 2014 coup, led the creation of two semi independent regions: the Luhansk People Republic and the Donetsk People Republic. The current crisis in 2019, the Trump administration unilaterally withdrew from the 1987 Intermediate Range Nuclear Force Treaty signed by the United States in the USSR, which called for eliminating short of the intermediate nuclear armed missiles. The missiles has been especially threatened to the USSR when it existed of the closeness of the US bases in Turkey and Western Europe, and became on even more in imminent danger to Russia as NATO became incorporating Eastern Russia, as NATO became incorporating East European states in 1997. Major Russian cities where which a few minute within a few minutes flying time of missiles from NATO bases in the countries, the danger will be multiplied if Ukraine, which has 12,000-mile border with Russia, were to become a NATO member, or if its territories was used as staging ground for advanced weapons for foreign military forces. In 2021, Russian equipment, and military forces was deployed near the border with Ukraine, but clearly inside Russian territory. U.S. officials, including President Joseph fucking Biden, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, predicted in defiance of evidence and logic that Russia was about to launch an all-out invasion. Russian President Vladimir Putin responded with demands that included Ukraine would never join NATO, nuclear weapons and advanced conventional missiles and weapons would never be deployed in Ukraine. The United States and NATO reject the first demand out of hand, of course. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki stated the president supported the right of sovereign nations to choose their partnership and alliance. Wow, really? Now you support that? Because you really didn't feel that way about Cuba and Venezuela, and they're sovereign, but okay. We're not even going to get to that. However, when Russian leaders stated that they might step up their military relationship with Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua, A national security advisor, Jake Sullivan, responded, "If Russia were to move in that direction, we will deal with it decisively." By decisively, Sullivan clearly means militarily. Yeah, of course, because they just always want to raid shit. In other words, the right of countries to choose their partnership and alliance extends only to those who are in the good graces and do the bidding of Washington. Yeah, the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 and its aftermath seemed to regate, regulate Russia to the status of a secondary power, perhaps permanently. But starting in the early 2000s, while now a capitalist country, it began to recover its position in the world. From a military perspective, it continues to be the second nuclear weapon state. It developed mutually beneficial relationships with the People's Republic of China and a common front of many diplomatic matters. It is exactly this recovery that has Russia to become increasingly a target of U.S. imperialist hostility over the past 2 decades. The working class and people have an interest in the demonization campaign, whether directed against Russia or any other country. Now is the time for anti war and other people's movements to say no to a new war or sanction against Russia. Yeah, there you go. There you have it. That is what's really going on. Okay. Now let's talk. So, I just think that it's very, very important um, that we acknowledge what's happening here. What's happening here is that the United States is openly out in the front, aggressively trying to topple Russian influence, trying to destroy all these other influences and become the dominant force in the world. They want to rule. They want to control. Anybody that thinks that they don't want that and they're actually out there for peace at this point, I really feel like you are so far deep in the rabbit hole that it's going to take a miracle to get you out. The United States government has no peaceful intentions for anything. You have to understand this. I'm sorry. If you don't understand this, then I don't know what to tell you. They have never been peaceful. Ever. Name a time that the United States did something overseas besides using missiles and killing people. Killing people has always just been their option to fix shit. You find a time, you tell me, okay? And when you do, I want you to send me multiple sources. All right? Multiple. And don't send me sources from fucking CNN only. All right? Do some due diligence with your goddamn research and actually look things up, please. Because I look things up. We all look things up. I'm telling you right now, please, please. It's time to oppose this. We don't need a war with Russia. We do not. We don't need a war with China. We don't need a war with Iran. We don't need a war with no other country. What we need to do is pull back our troops. We create the situation. We made Ukraine turn into a fascist, neo-Nazi controlled government. We did that. We gave them power. So, I'm sorry. There's nothing else I can say about this matter, but saying that it's so important to impose this. It's so important to tell everybody no. No, we cannot. We cannot. We cannot. We cannot do this. We cannot send our children, our fathers, our mothers, our people into this stupid ass conflict. It's not right. Thank you so much for listening to me. No war with Russia, please. No war.